The purpose of this presentation is to give you a basic foundational understanding of the term culture, the idea of culture, so that you can start your course with a good and clear and basic understanding of what we're talking about. Culture is a word that you've grown up with your whole life, but it's used in all different kinds of ways. And so I find that most people misunderstand it. Most people get it confused. They think culture is the same thing as people in a society, and they get the word society and culture mixed up. And so in this presentation, I'm going to clearly spell out what this term means and help you get a really clear and concise understanding of the word, so you can use it in helping other people understand what you're talking about, and you can use it in your own reading and in your own analysis of the world around you, and for the rest of the course that we use and explore. So let's go on with it. Let me show you something here. Look at the next slide here. I thought this was very interesting. How tight is your state? Maybe you're from Texas, maybe you're from somewhere else in the world. The United States has what we call a heterogeneous society. That means that we have a lot of variety, a lot of people from other parts of the world. We are a nation of immigrants. You've heard that your whole life probably. There are other societies in the world. You may study Japan in your other reading in the course. It's what we call a very homogeneous society. People in Japan are very similar to one another. In this little graphic here, the states are divided up based on how strongly they enforce social norms. And so you see on the left and right coast, people are not quite as rigid about their enforcing of social norms. That shouldn't really surprise you too much, does it? You see Florida down there is a little less restrictive as well. Florida has a lot of people from the Northeast that have immigrated down there and they have retired down there. So that's why Florida is not necessarily a southern only state. But you see the middle part of the United States, and of course in the South, very much more religious. A lot more people report that they go to church more often, let's say, in the southern part of the United States. And so they're going to be more, at least they're going to report that they follow the rules more. Enforce social norms is another way of saying people follow the rules. But I thought this would be interesting to start off. Culture, a part of culture, are people's behavior. What do people do? And one of the things people do is they follow the rules. And part of culture are the rules that we decide in a society. And rules are based on ideas, our values. And so when society decides we've got to figure out how to survive, one of the first things they do is they come up with a set of values, or a set of what's important, what are the important ideas around here. Rules and laws that they decided. Right now we're struggling as a country to figure out, do we need to everybody wear a face mask? Do we need a social distance from each other as we're trying to battle a virus, a global pandemic? And we struggle and battle back and forth about what's the appropriate rule to follow. A nation of individuals who want to have personal freedom versus a nation trying to survive itself. So I always tell people that culture is just a word. And culture is the word that we use to describe what does the society do. How does it figure out how, first of all, to survive? All of its members has to figure out, we got to survive. We got to figure out a way to make it and make it through the night, and find food to eat, and find shelter, and keep the dinosaurs from eating us. We got to figure out a way to make it through the next generation. And so their answers to those, their solutions, their answers to those questions and solutions to those kinds of problems is what we call culture. Now, once a society has figured out how to survive, then it begins to think about and concentrate on thriving. So you and I right now, we typically don't think a whole lot about survival problems. That doesn't mean there aren't people in our society who worry about surviving, but mostly we don't think about that. So you and I mostly think about thriving. Do I need to think about getting an upgraded cell phone? These shoes don't look like they're in the right style right now. What kind of a car should I buy next? What is a new song that I want to upload because I really like the one you're listening to? So we think about thriving kinds of issues. We're going to go to school because we want to learn some more and become better people. We want to be people who know more and are more advanced and evolved academically and cognitively and intellectually. That's a thriving society. That's the kind of world that we live in these days. So, as you're sitting here in an online class and you're looking at a presentation like this, I think you should also be taking notes, writing some things down as you're thinking, kind of get yourself engaged. Can you think of some examples where people have to physically and psychologically, don't discount psychological survival, can you think of some examples of that? That people have to interact with somebody else in order to survive. In other words, you can't survive by yourself. You have to have somebody else to help you to survive. My example would be having a marriage and creating a family. Without a normalized way to raise children, I don't think our society would ever get off the ground. You know, you'd have a perpetual Lord of the Flies, just a wild chaos all the time. Nobody would be raising kids. Nobody would be teaching kids right from wrong. It would be a chaos. What are some examples you can think of? Jot those down in your notes here. Why do we need other people? Why do humans need other people to teach them how to survive, to show them how to survive, really physically and psychologically? Remember, humans are different than other animals. Humans aren't the same as animals, but we don't have a set of instincts so that we know how to survive. Someone has to teach us how to survive. My grandson is going through potty training right now. Well, he didn't know how to do potty training on his own. Someone has to show him how to do that. And think of what a disaster 12th grade would have been for you if you'd never learned how to be potty trained and the teacher had to stop class every time someone had to go to the bathroom and had to take them out to the bathroom to change their diapers. I mean, I'm being silly here, but imagine all the things you learned how to do and you had to know how to do even before you could be turned loose to go to school on your own. Think of some examples of that. What did you have to learn from your parents so that you could survive, so that you could make it in the world? All the things, we take things for granted, like how to cross the street, how to eat with a knife and fork. Think of all the things you take for granted that you had to learn. And then this is a little bit more abstract, but you and I learn and develop our sense of self, who we are, the way that our parents interact with us, our siblings interact with us. We develop a self-concept. We develop confidence about who we are. We developed our character. What kind of a person do you think you'd be if you were raised in a different country? That's really abstract here, but jot something down here because, I think you probably know people from other countries. What if you'd been raised in a completely different country than you're in now? Maybe a different kind of economy. Or maybe if you'd been raised 100 years ago, what kind of a person do you think you'd be? What kind of characteristics do you think you wouldn't have or that you would have? Jot down some notes about that. I'm just trying to get you to be thinking about things now as you go through this, so that you don't just flip through this and listen to me and my silly voice. Think about that for a minute. Now, as I said, you and I are in a thriving society. So we don't really worry about how am I going to survive? How am I going to make it through the night? We focus on personal achievement, on our goals. Of course, we don't invent those ourselves. Our culture tells us what's a goal that we should be reaching, what we should be achieving, what we should be wanting for ourselves. What are your goals right now? What are some of the short term? I want to get through this class. I want to get this degree. What are some long-term goals that you have? What have you thought about this week? Write something down here. They're in your head. You know, I walk around with them. You do too. But sometimes it helps to write them down a little bit. What are some things that you need to do in order to thrive? How do you know you're thriving in the world? And what I want you to do is be able to understand how those are things that other people around you share with you, because you're from the same society that uses the same culture. They're not something that you've independently invented on your own. And then I always stick this at the end here. I want you to think about a thriving society in a Western culture like ours, in a heterogeneous society. We're mostly interacting with people who are we're all just doing our jobs. And by that I mean our interaction is instrumental. So think about all the different people you've run across in the past week, maybe just the past day or two. And did you really even know those people? Did you really know their name? Or were you just picking up fries with your burger? Were you just interacting with people who were just doing their job? And were you just doing your job? That's what we call instrumental interaction. And that's something to think about when you think about being engaged in some sort of a ministry, living out your Christian faith in the world. When most people in our society today just do their job and they interact with people in a kind of a surface way, and they don't interact with people in a personal way anymore. It's something to think about, that we've developed that kind of a culture, and we think that's thriving. And is it really thriving when that's how we interact with people? Jot something down. Jot down a thought about that, or maybe jot down a question about that that raises in your mind. So these are some examples. Sometimes this is hard to think about. These are some examples of how American culture has organized itself to enable you and I, both of us, all of us, to survive and thrive. So American society has created compulsory public education. It's making all of our children go to school, because our society would not thrive if we didn't make everybody go to school. So everybody goes to school, not just for their own personal benefit, but for our social benefit. America wants to have the most educated society in the world, so we make everybody go to school up to a certain point. That's good for you, but it's also good for us. We have medical care. We have medical care for people who can't afford basic medical care. We're still fighting about Obamacare, what we call Obamacare. But way before that, we had Medicaid for people who couldn't afford basic medical care, for the people in the lowest of social classes. And then we had Medicare for people who were older, retired people who were no longer working. And so what that means is that American society decided people who were unable to afford medical care, we need to do it as a society. We need to help them have medical care. We thought medical care was something important for everybody to have. Again, Social Security is another example of that. People shouldn't have to work until they drop dead. We decided we need to pull people out of the workforce so that we could have openings for younger people to move into the workforce. And a way to do that was to provide a small, it's not completely replacing their income, but a way to supplement people's retirement income And so Social Security was a way to do that when it was invented. And then we have insurance requirements for people. When you're driving your car, you have to have insurance so that you don't cause a problem for somebody else if you have a car wreck, or even for yourself. Medical bills, replacing your car, replacing somebody else's car. The state requires that so that you don't cause problems for other people. You may not be familiar with the last example, Texas Early College. Texas discovered a long time ago that our population was shifting and changing, and the population in Texas was predominantly, and is right now predominantly, Hispanic population, and the predominant Hispanic population did not have careers but had jobs. The predominant population did not go to college, had a high school diploma. And so the state decided, hey, that's not going to be good for the future of the state economy. And so what we need to do is figure out some ways to get our students, predominantly Hispanic students, into college and into careers. And so what they developed was a Texas Early College program. And so at our high schools in Texas, at our predominantly Hispanic school districts in Texas, students can apply for this program. And when they go through high school and complete high school, they're also at the same time completing a 2-year college degree, associate's degree, so that when they finish high school, they're halfway through college, and it kind of boosts them into college. That's a way for, that was a way for our state to look out and to plan for its own future economy, not just for the personal well-being of individual students, but for the whole state as well. Those are some examples of answers to that larger question up at the top there. Okay. I always think culture is just an answer to a question. So here's a bunch of questions. I think culture right now, a thriving culture, helps us to answer. Look at some of those questions. Maybe there's some questions that you have. I think culture does that. It helps us answer these kinds of questions. It provides us a social answer to these kinds of questions that we all struggle with, that we all try to figure out. Mundane questions like what's for lunch, but bigger questions. Why doesn't everybody vote? The whole gamut of questions. That's what culture helps us to do. It's an answer to those questions is what it is. Culture, because we don't have a set of instincts, humans don't have that. Culture is kind of like a toolbox to enable people to survive. It's answers to questions. It's an instruction book that you kind of internalize into people through socialization. But that's kind of a way to think about it. If you want to figure out a really easy answer to what's culture, it's a toolbox for survival. And so we want to raise children at home and in schools so that they will have that toolbox, so that they'll be able to survive and then thrive in the society in which they're born. Here's a quick, down and dirty, real easy definition from the publisher mcgrawhill in one of their sociology textbooks about what culture is. If I were you, I'd just write down this sentence here, but pay attention to some of the words and terms in the definition. Look at this. Culture is something that has to be learned. So we're not born with this knowledge. We're not born with this toolbox. We don't know the answers that culture provides us with. So it's something learned. So that means it's something that someone has to teach you, right? Culture is something that's shared. So it's not your own private culture. Culture is something that a whole society shares with each other. And it helps us understand how we're supposed to act, how we're supposed to behave. And something really deep, what does everything mean? Then think of those deep questions. What's the meaning of life? Religion, like Christianity, is an integral part of culture, for instance. But also, how long are you supposed to have shorts this season? That sounds kind of trivial, doesn't it? But that's a meaning question. What's the latest fashion? That's a meaning question that people have, and try to figure out every year. Anyway, I'd write this sentence down. It's a real quick, easy definition of what culture is. Here is another quick, easy definition. All the ways, everything that humans, not by themselves, but in society, create to figure out how to survive and then how to thrive. That's what culture is. Just real quick, easy definitions of what culture is. I've got a much longer definition in just a second, but that's an easy definition of what it is. I like that picture because we have to get culture into every generation that comes along through socialization. Now, here is a much more elaborate definition of culture from Diana Kendall. She was a professor at Baylor, and she's written a textbook that I use here in my intro to sociology class, and this is a larger definition of culture. So it's knowledge, you see, it's language, it's values, it's customs. Usually we divide culture up into material and non-material. So it's stuff that you can see, you know, like your car, like your book, like your laptop, and it's things that you don't see, like ideas, like values or language. You have to pass it from people to people. You're not born with it. And the last sentence there is important. Society is people. Culture is ideas, actions, and things. So, as I've said already, the last block of text there, it's the toolbox. We have to have it to survive. Without culture, a society doesn't survive, and members of a society don't survive. So this is a little bit more elaborate explanation of what culture is and how it works and why it works the way that it does. So if I'm going to analyze culture, this is what I do. I always just divide it up into 3 categories. And I just encourage you to just remember this and think about it this way. If you're going to go to a different country, if you're going to look in your textbook and try to analyze Nigeria, or you're going to look at Japan or Germany, what are their ideas? What are their actions? What are their things? You know, what do they produce there in India that's really unique to India? What are the things that they have there? The material culture. What kinds of actions do they do there? What do they have? Different kinds of you know. I study popular culture, and India is famous for Bollywood, and they have these incredible music videos, and there's these dances and this music. Well, that's an action, you know. And then what kinds of ideas come out of different societies around the world? What does their culture produce? What ideas? So right now, you know, here we are in the United States, and so we've got our Constitution, our Declaration of Independence, these ideas that promote individual freedom. And of course, here we are standing 6 feet apart, you know, social distancing during the pandemic, and everybody can't find enough toilet paper, which is something you didn't realize you really needed until you didn't have it anymore, right? I'm being a little silly here, but hey, it's not silly when you don't have the toilet paper, is it? So just remember, ideas, actions, things, and maybe you might want to write down some ideas, actions, and things in America. And maybe you've been somewhere else in the world and you can remember some of their ideas, actions, and things that are unique to that society. You're going to analyze their culture. So you have uploaded into the course some lists of American values. One of them is from the University of Michigan. They did a study about American values. And so you have that list, and we'll use it in some other assignments. But as an example here, American values are ideas from a society. And so individualism, competition, materialism are examples of American ideas, their values that we have. And so instead of just looking at a list like that, I would encourage you to try to analyze things like that in a way like this, you know. Here's the value, what's the definition of it, and those are provided in that list that I've given you. What are some examples? When does it work really well? When does it not work very well? When does it get in the way? When is individualism a good thing? When is individualism a bad thing? You know, can you go to the store and buy as much toilet paper as you want, or should you save some for somebody else? you know? Does individualism, competition, materialism, does it work all the time in the local church? You know, or does it get in the way? Do American values always work well in the body of Christ? That's a good question to ask ourselves. I've got an example here. One of the values on the list that you always see about Americans is they report that we have, as Americans, a strong belief in God. People always predicted that would go away, that secularism would come along, and Americans' belief in God would decline, and that really happened. Our definition, here it is. Here's an example of it. And then when does it benefit society? And when does it harm society? Isn't that weird? How would belief in God harm society? Well, sometimes it's a source of social conflict. You know, we've got 200 different major Protestant denominations. It doesn't always, and those denominations have fought each other like crazy in history. You remember your history. Have been at each other's throats all the time, you know, burned each other at the stake. Each of the American colonies, as we started out, 13 colonies, were a different denomination, and you would get in trouble if you went to a different colony and practiced your religion there. It was a problem initially. Right now we're a lot better at it than we ever were, but it initially was a cause problems. Religious freedom was a problem, and the way you did your belief in God was a problem initially. So here's a way that I analyze a value from the previous slide. So when you look at those values on the list in future assignments here, this is a way that you might sit down and look at it and analyze it in a little bit more, this is what we call a cultural analysis, in a little bit more elaborate way. Okay, so here are some of these core American values. Again, I have it on a document for you to look at. Here are some of the definitions of them as you see them. The value itself, and then it's elaborated. You know, they all look really positive, and then of course we survey people, and we discover Americans still, and of course recent events seem to indicate racism and group superiority haven't really gone away as much as we thought they had. Racism and group superiority have been declining every single decade, even though the news media doesn't seem to want to report that. They have been declining, but it's still there. It's still something that people report and talk about when we survey Americans. But these are American values. Why don't you jot down in your notes, you know, which of these do you think attract people? When people immigrate to the United States, when people talk about the United States, which of these values do you think are important to other people when they say, I want to go there, I want to raise my children there? Which are attractive? There may be some besides number 10 that aren't attractive to people. That seems kind of hard to believe, doesn't it? But if you look at some of those, is there something that might not be as attractive to other people, that might kind of repel people? Maybe even people from other religious backgrounds. Jot down some notes about that as well. Whatever you think, what you think about. These core American values are not what someone else thinks. We survey Americans over and over again, and this is what they report as their values. And so this keeps reappearing decade after decade as this is what Americans say, this is what's good, this is what's bad, this is what's right, this is what's wrong, this is what a value is. Okay, so what's culture? How does it work? What does it do? What's its purpose? Culture is a human construct. Culture is not something we're born with. So that's why we find a lot of cultural variety all around the world. And culture changes as human societies change. So we're not doing the same things your grandparents were doing. Our society is constantly evolving, constantly transforming itself. Societies need to survive, and individual members of societies need to survive. And so culture is the solution to that problem. Once they get that figured out, societies then figure out how to thrive. How do we go to the moon? How do we invent a laptop computer that's lighter and has a larger charge on it? How many Star Wars movies do we need to invent and create to keep people happy? Thriving. How do we want to live longer and invent more and better chemotherapy treatment so that we can wipe out cancer? Surviving and thriving. If you want to analyze culture, an easy way to do it is to look at a society's actions, ideas, and things, both material and non-material items, culture. And that's a good way to analyze a culture and to figure out how does that society survive and thrive. Because we don't have instincts, we call culture social instincts. It's a toolbox, remember? And so values, ideas, like religion, are what influence what people do. There's always a philosophical debate about what comes first, material conditions or ideas. Do material conditions produce ideas, or do ideas produce material conditions? And that's a historic debate that goes on and on and on. I tend to find myself, I'm an idealist, and so I think ideas kind of come first. I got a quote here from Alan Watts, we seldom realize, for example, that our most private thoughts and emotions are not actually our own. We think in terms of language and images which we did not invent, but which were given to us by our society. What he's saying there is the way that you even think, your private self, the tools you have to do that with, to think, your language even, is something that society has given you. Your culture, your language. And so you're a product of the world in which you were born, your society. And that toolbox that they gave you to operate within, that culture, is what's so important. So that's what this course is about culture. And then it's going to help us understand the context that people live in. So go back through this slideshow again. Maybe turn the narration off and just look at the slides again and read stuff. Send me questions that you might have about it. But this is just a real basic introduction to the term culture and the idea about culture. It's a very exciting term. It's very exciting to understand it, to study it, to then go look at the rest of the world and see how they operate, how they figure out how to survive in their environment, with their history, and with their populations. It's a fascinating thing to study. I think you're going to enjoy the course. I think it's going to help you tremendously with your life right now and with your life in the future. I can't wait to jump in and get started with this.